Good afternoon, morning, good night, wherever you are. Welcome to another session of Canvas Live. Canvas Live sessions are presented by the Canvas community members and/or instructor employees to help Canvas users like yourself improve and enhance their teaching and learning with Canvas. Today, Nick and I are back. We are continuing. This is number 4 in the Google LTI series. And we're going to talk about assignments simplified. My name is Birai. I'm a community manager here at Instructure, and with me is Nick Demas. He's a trainer here at Instructure as well. So we're going to start out, as we always do, and talk about what the Google LTI is and does. It allows users to leverage more Google tools and functionalities within Canvas. So that means less toggling between Google and Canvas, and some automated permissions already kind of preset for you. Just quickly, how to install the Google LTI. First, you got to get it from EduApps, then you got to configure the tool, and then you have to authorize your access. So let's go through that process really quickly so we're all on the same page. You go to your course settings in Canvas, and you click on the apps tab. Do a search for Google Apps, and you should see the Google App Install button available there. You'll be prompted to put in a consumer key and a shared secret key. So you'd have to, for that, open up another browser tab and go to eduappcenter.com, do a search for the Google Apps. And from there, at the very bottom, you'll see there's a link that says Here. If you click on that link, you will be prompted to generate an LTI key and secret. You'd grab those numbers and you go back to your Canvas course and insert those numbers there. And then at some point when you are using Google at any point in your class, whether you are going to embed your first document or create your first submission, whether you're a student or a teacher, it will then prompt you to authorize. And so once you authorize, you can then begin using the Google LTI. So today we're going to talk about the assignment lifecycle. And basically from a teacher's perspective or a course designer's perspective or even a TA's perspective, we're going to talk about how you create an assignment, how you submit an assignment from student view, and then how you grade the assignment again from that instructor perspective. What we usually do in these sessions is we do it without the Google LTI, and then Nick demonstrates it with the Google LTI so that you have an opportunity to compare and contrast some of the limitations and advantages, and you can decide whether or not this LTI is effective and works for you. So in sort of the current process, when you create an assignment and you want to bring some assignment documentation or prompts from Google, you could do one of two things. You could go to Google, grab the link, and then come back to your assignment prompts and link to that Google document. And that would just create the inline link in your assignment prompt. The other option, of course, if you want to embed the document into your assignment prompts, you would have to go to Google, publish the document to the web, grab the embed code, and then come back and embed it into the rich content editor. So those are kind of currently how that process works if you were not using the Google LTI. Still works the same way. Next, let's talk about some of the assignment settings. So if you wanted students to participate in submitting anything that comes from a file from their Google Drive or anything of that nature, you would set it as either just a text entry, which would just be a general opportunity for users to just create, cut and paste perhaps their document in there, or a file upload. With the file upload, if you were planning to annotate the file, you want to make sure that you restrict the file upload type to PDF, doc, docx, etc. If you don't plan on annotating, then just maybe a text entry or cut and paste type of thing would be just fine. But let's just kind of work with the file upload example. So from the student perspective, when they go to submit the assignment, they will see a tab that says File Upload. They would click on that, select the file that they want to upload, and then go from there. Now, if it's a file that's in their Google Drive, or they would have to probably download that file and upload it independently. Now, there is a setting for Google Doc. So let's go to the next slide. If your student has already integrated Google to their user account, they enable that setting, they will see a Google Doc tab available to them, regardless of what that file type submission is. That tab will show up, and they will have access to their Google Drive, just the documents only. So this is an important distinction to make, because if your student has already enabled this in their account, when they enable Google Drive, they will, as you'll see when Nick demonstrates, they will see both tabs, a Google Doc and a Google Drive tab. So I think it warrants some clarification to either uninstall the Google Doc integration, or just at least make them aware of the distinction. Google Docs only will pull up your documents, whereas Google Drive will pull up other things like spreadsheets and presentations and things like that. So that's a clear distinction worth mentioning. And then on the back end, regardless of whether the student submits a file, just a regular file from their computer, a file from Google Docs, or a file from Google Drive, which we'll see later, it comes in as a PDF, or it comes in as a way that you can still annotate. So from the instructor's perspective, nothing changes. Regardless of where that document comes from, you will still be able to annotate the document as always. So now I'm going to turn it over to Nick, and he's going to sort of demonstrate how this sort of looks in real time. Nick?
Thanks, B-Ry, and good morning, afternoon, everybody, and whatever time it is when you're watching this. And thank you very much for that. Let's actually just jump into the course, and we're going to go through just the creation of the assignment. So for me, I'm going to go in and build an assignment out using Google LTI as my option. Here's the assignment unpublished right now, so I'd remember that it's going to be there, and we'll be able to go back into it. Let's wait for this to spin up. And we're going to be taking a look at this from both the student perspective and the instructor perspective. You'll know the difference today. If you see this face in the upper left of your screen, that is me. If you see Abraham Lincoln, that is me as a student. Let's go in and edit this assignment. Now today we're going to go through the typical assignment creation and not talk about the cloud assignment creation. We're going to be doing more about the cloud assignment in a couple of weeks, so definitely come back for that session. We'll take a look at that. All right, when we're building an assignment in Canvas, if you talk to anybody in the training team, and I'm part of that training team, you'll hear us say, be descriptive in the creation of your assignments. That's going to make it a little bit easier for your students to be able to follow along. And it's going to be better for you to be able to go back and review and know exactly what you were supposed to do when it comes to this assignment. And I say that because I'm not actually going to do that right here. Because, you know, quite frankly, you don't want to watch me come up with my dissertation on screen. But what I am going to do with this assignment is I am going to embed something from Google. I'm having my students, in this case, I'm going to have my students write an essay based on a document that they are reading for the class. And so with sure luck, you have to make sure to hit the right folder icon too to be able to get into these different pieces. There is what I was looking for. We're going to have my students read A Scandal in Bohemia. I'm going to embed that in the class. I prefer embed over link in this option just because it's going to keep it there, even if I have students who are using mobile devices to access this assignment. And you're going to build the assignments out like you normally do. I'm not going to spend too much time on the submission types. I'm just going to jump right in and pull it in from Google. And just so I can have a calendar item, why don't we make this due on Monday? And then I'm going to save and publish that. So basically the process for me in this was to start out with a nice description, letting my students know exactly what they're going to do, adding the document that I want them to read. It's going to be part of this hypothetical assignment without going through all the steps of typing it. Give it a date, go through all the assignment setup process. And then I'm going to save and publish this so we can actually go into the student view. But before that, just because I want to check it out in the SpeedGrader, I'm going to add a rubric to this. Now, we all know that you can create rubrics directly at that location, but I'm kind of a rubrics person. I know this is slightly off the path, but I like the idea of building my rubrics in a separate place so that I can then showcase or have these different rubrics, build them once, use them multiple times. Let me scroll down my internet. It's a little bit slow between running these different platforms. So let's use this rubric. This is the rubric the students are going to be tested on for this. We will see it in the class. There's the rubric. Now let's jump over to the student side of things and go through the assignment submission. Right there. Let me go back into my modules. Here we are as a student. There's Abraham Lincoln. And let's go into this assignment. Now when it comes in, we are going to see as it comes in. Here's the piece that I might want the student to read right now. Here it is. I can even change the view if I want it to fit the screen or have a better view of it. So the student might read this and then go through and, oh, look at that. They have that rubric that they know they're going to be graded on. So let's have them actually submit the assignment. Now we talked about the different options when it comes to this assignment submission. I can do the file upload and pull something in from my computer, something I may have written. If I'm going to go with Google Doc, let's just take a look at this option. Look at that. There is my list there, kind of nondescript. And here is my Google Drive option. If I go to Google Drive, it's going to be a little bit better organized for me. Plus that search option. Since I built this out ahead of time, I'm just going to go ahead and take that option and submit it. We're going to submit assignment. So where does this go now? Well, it's going to go back to the assignment. So here comes another screen switch. And let's go into SpeedGrader. And here we are with that assignment as it has been rendered in the SpeedGrader. Now, it's cool. Remember when I guess we were first messing with this, you might have noticed that it was a little bit quirky jumping into the SpeedGrader. It seems like this live beta Google LTI that we are using, now we're able to actually go in and start using our annotation tools to start doing all the fun stuff that we do in SpeedGrader when we're adding comments and whatnot. So this is going to be useful in blowing off steam in some cases, but also being able to go through and just change things up, add your comments, go through your typical annotation process, and make this that much better of a grading experience for the students. We still have our rubric that we are going to be using as well to go through this. I didn't set this to use this rubric for this assignment. That was my problem on that. And then we're still going to be able to add our comments and submit that information for our students and move on to the next student when we do so. Now, one other thing that we were messing around with a little bit before this session was we tried to upload a slideshow. So let's go back into grades. This is kind of showcasing a slightly different option. We uploaded, actually it was the slideshow for this session. And when we did that, we found that we had this slide rendered in Canvas. So it looks like we are going to be able to do some annotation on our slides, at least drawing, and be able to work on some of our slides. So again, remember, live beta, things are going to be a work in progress. We're going to see some changes along the way. Keep that in mind as you are looking at what's going on the screen and how you experience Google. That's probably going to be, or Google app, because it's live beta, is going to be changing from time to time. Watch for those changes, work with it, and try these different pieces out as you're going through. But again, right now we're looking at a slide right here. This is Google Slides now in the speed grader, and we're able to mark it up, you dropping it in or adding it through Google Drive. Loving that option. All right, I'm going to take it out of that demo mode and just go through just a couple of tips that we want to consider. First of all, if you have installed this in your instance, if you've installed Google LTI in your instance, make sure that if you've also installed it at the course level, that you delete it from the course level so you're not looking at two of this piece. You don't want two of everything. But when it comes to adding your documents or pieces from Google into Canvas, consider using embed over inline when it comes to adding those pieces. It's going to help out better, help your mobile community out a little bit better. Plus, it's also going to make it a little bit easier for your people who are accessing Google through their computers. And also, be consistent in your naming conventions when it comes to your folders, files, etc. Keep it away. Help yourself out. This is something we talk about as a training team all the time. Help yourself out by being consistent when it comes to those naming conventions so that your students can stay organized with you and so that you are organized as you're going through it. And as you saw here, we on the submission on my case where I have Google enabled through my account area as a web service in addition to the Google Drive LTI. It's going to be important that we talk to our students about that. Explain the difference to our students so that they can remember that they need to jump into one or the other when it comes to the assignments. That's a good piece to add to your assignment overall as you are explaining the assignment to your students. So let's just take a look at some of the questions. We'll see if we can work through some of these questions. I'm going to move on to the next screen to Birai.
Okay, I've answered some of them, but there's a couple of questions that come up in regards to when you're course copying or when you're sharing the course in external places like Commons. So the question is really around the embed or the linking. Neil asks, so if you copy the Google LTI rich content embeds, will it work when you're copying it from course to course? So I've created a nice little embed here in one of my pages or assignments, and then I course copy. Those new users and those students should be able to have access once they authorize their Google, correct?
Without having tried that, I'm gonna have to try that one out, Neil. I'm hesitant to give you an answer till I conclude something or copy something and bring it over. Yeah, so let me try that one out. I can go back into the after this session is over. I can go back into the questions and try to get you on that one, Neil. Is that hopefully that's okay? I hate to give non-answers, but some of these things take a little bit of research.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep this question and then we'll go to the event page and give you that answer, Neil. We'll do some testing on our back end and see what we can come up with.
Okay, and
right, that is still correct.
Right. And it looks like, Amy, when you're trying to embed images after creating an assignment, so you're kind of talking about that live feature. It usually is not, and for me, it hasn't been an instantaneous push over if I've added content to my Google Doc and then tried to use it in Canvas. It's not. I've always wanted it to be instantaneous. It seems like there's been about a 2 or 3 minute lag for me. It could be, I don't know exactly why that happens. That's where I run into some of my tech limitations, Amy. So I'm sorry about that. But give it just a few minutes when you are working through that. If you're adding an image to a Google Doc and then you're having that transfer over, especially if you're doing it through Google versus through the rich content editor version of Google.
We do have another question regarding those students who have individual accounts versus those students who have sort of Google School integration or at the enterprise level. Do you have any best practices or shared practices that you've seen in prompting students to disconnect from if they're logged into to their personal Gmail or Google account to disconnect that so that they're logging in with their school account in order to access some of the files.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the honor system on that. I think Neil addressed that well in the stream too. It's going to be a matter of accountability, and hopefully that they're going to be able to take a look at it. So yeah, that's a matter of accountability, getting them to be on board with that. So yeah, kind of sorry that we can't disable one and add the other, but that's a little bit just, it's going to be a constant hounding of the students, kind of like getting everybody to make sure that they're using the institution assigned email address with Canvas overall. It's just kind of a policy and culture that you have to create. And it's probably going to take a little bit of time, but accountability, that's how I would approach it.
And also, if your school has single sign-on with Google, that might alleviate some of those problems because they can't access Canvas without logging into their institution account anyway. So that might alleviate some of those disconnects. But if anyone has sort of the prompts that they use in each area, or if you've embedded something or linked to something in your class, if you know, a disclaimer at the bottom or something like that, if you have something that you use, feel free to share it. We'd love to have something to go off of. That would be great.
Yeah, the conversation is important on this one. Let's keep that conversation alive. If you have shared ideas, and maybe that's part of student orientation. I don't know, when the tour guides are walking backward across campus, maybe that's something that they can address. Or when we have parent-teacher conference in K-12, we can say, let's talk about authorizing your account.
Yeah, Greg brought up a really good point. The authentication is really a problem with the Google Forms. As you know, Google LTI doesn't account for forms yet, and they don't allow the pass-through authentication like Google Docs, Slides, etc. So, yeah, that's a good point there. It must just be the settings that you have to have in the Google Forms in terms of, yeah, the permissioning will have to be different there. Jessica has a great question. Is this the same for the instructor? Can they use their institution account and personal account for personal Google account for this?
It's going to be one or the other, Jessica, and I encourage you to stick with the institution assigned for some of the reasons that we're seeing in the stream, just to try to get everybody on one page. And I believe you're probably going to have more storage through your campus-wide piece, and plus it's overall it's going to help you with organization. And the thing to remember too is we can always share from one Google account to another one of our Google accounts if we need to. So if you're watching my screen, I've shared between my NDEMIS add instructor, that's my Google Drive account here. I've been sharing with that my personal one so that I can log in as Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was already spoken for in the Google world, so I wasn't able to use that. So I've had to go with my name. So I was able to share documents. We shared, Uri and I shared the slide deck over to me so I could submit it just to experiment. So that's always something to take into considerations. You're going to be able to share this information with yourself. Really, it makes sense, I think, to be sticking, personally, for organization. I like to keep it compartmentalized. Work emails, work-related tasks stay in my work Google account, whereas personal stuff will be in that private account. Obviously, I blended it a little bit here for these sessions, but trust me, I'll be deleting everything.
Well, if you continue having questions, feel free to post them in the event page. We wanted to bring your attention to the next two in the series. The one that we're going to do in 2 weeks will be, it's called Worksheet Wonders, but we're going to dive into cloud assignments real deep there and find out, what are the pros and cons, what are the strengths, limitations, what have you been working on, and what can we do to continue evolving this process. And then after that, we're going to talk about collaboration tools and how we can leverage the Google LTI with groups and collaborations and kind of get fancy there. If you want to learn more about the Google LTI, this week's Canvas trivia that we have every Thursday, it runs for 24 hours, it focuses on the Google LTI. So feel free to check out the Canvas trivia, at least get an idea of how well you know the Google LTI, and maybe get your faculty to do it as well. One more question from Jessica. Is there an easy way to test the student experience? Oh, and we have another question from Amy. We'll get that one next. Amy's question, the student experience, I think Neil had a good feedback there. You have to have a second account in order to, and I think Nick comes across this a lot too as he's doing his demos, you do have to have a second account in order to really test it out.
Right. It's important to remember that student view is really based on your Canvas authentication, and Google would need, you'd have to look at the second authentication for Google to be able to do that back and forth. And really to get into that, it depends on your institution and what you're able to do at your institution. Maybe if you have a sandbox account that you're working from, it might be okay. Again, check it out, but it might be okay to actually, I created a dummy Google account, actually did it through Melanator. A web service, a dummy web service, really. Dummy's not the right word, but I've used Melanator to create fake students in class. In fact, I use a fake class that I can use for training overall, and so I've used that here. So I did fake students. It's not, again, yeah, it's a little bit difficult when it comes to that student view. And Professor Greg provided a good piece too. One of my favorite pieces. It's a little bit outside of the scope of this, what we'd be talking with Google LTI, but I use Google Drawings all the time to bring in images and different content for classes. In fact, I'll create home pages. If you've been to one of my trainings, you've seen how cheesy they are. I do them cheesy on purpose so that they stand out really, but I'll use Google Drawings and embed that images, and I'll actually copy those pieces and just change the wording slightly so I can have a consistent homepage for multiple classes.
Amy, you actually created a good segue for Amy's question, which Greg addresses as well. Amy asks the question about images and being able to upload those images in the Google that she's put in her drive. It doesn't seem to pull up the list of images. And could that be because of the limitations of the Google LTI to just spreadsheets and presentations and documents?
Right, that might be the case. So when I first saw your question, Amy, I apologize. I addressed it a little bit earlier. I missed the context for it. That's the problem with. That's my problem, right? So I've actually, yeah, I've been adding images through Google Docs, and you saw that with that student assignment. Actually, I did it through a Google Doc. I added all those images of different actors who have played Sherlock Holmes over time. That's kind of my go-to example. And that's worked for me, and as suggested to, Google Drawing is a great way to bring in images. Seems like images themselves might be a little bit problematic, and you know, quite frankly, I don't play with images enough when it comes to Google Drive overall. That's something else I guess I'll play with after this session and check it out.
Okay, great. Let's go to the next slide, and let's just sort of, given that we're kind of short on time and we're wrapping things up, and we want to be respectful of your time as well. Because we are in beta, and because this is all kind of an exploratory process for everybody as we try to figure out what type of feedback to provide our product team on this. We're all out there exploring and trying different things with it and trying to find its strengths and limitations, just like you are. We'd love to get your participation if you're in K-12 and you're leveraging this LTI. We'd love to hear from you in terms of a panel discussion we like to put together with the product managers. And so if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me directly. And we'd love to hear from you there. Next slide. We also have, and if you're, again, kind of a work in progress, and if you're working through some issues or questions and you want to know more as you're doing it, we, as you know, have community chat rooms available. And so we have a channel dedicated to Google. So if you haven't been part of the chat rooms, you can go to live.canvaslms.com, which will have a link to the Canvas chat rooms. You can click on there, and go ahead and fill out a form to be part of that. Once you're approved, you can go into the chat rooms and search for Google Canvas integration, and participate in discussions as you're trying new things, as you want to kind of share new stuff. That's kind of our feedback loop as well. And this is a community chat room, so we don't have product people in there or instructional employees necessarily, although we're in there. But you know, another place to talk with community members. That said, we'll close out by saying, you know, always connect with us in the community. Give us your feedback. Next slide, Nick. And you know, make sure you're following Canvas Live Space. All new updates are going to be up there. Any new sessions on these topics or any topics you'll be notified as new events show up. We do have a Canvas Live user group, so it's a place more of like a working group to collaborate on projects before they get presented in the Canvas Live space. And of course, feel free to come with us and hang out in the Google chat rooms as well. I'm sorry, not Google chat rooms, the Canvas community chat rooms. We appreciate your feedback. Thank you for coming. We hope to see you in a future Canvas Live session, if not, hopefully in this series. Nick, thanks again for your time and helping us out with the demo. And have a great weekend, everybody.